Let's talk about reality. So, there are many ways to go about this in a metaphysics sense, but I would not indulge in that. I will just straight up give the simplest, most neat um, definition of reality I can think of, which is that reality is what provides resistance. So the notion of resistance is key, and we can think of any kind of resistance, really. Material resistance, the fact that I will punch this wall and it will punch me back. There will be a counter action. In fact, like Newton's third law is basically a law of reality. It's a law of this kind of neutral relationship between action and counteraction is really important in order for realizing real forces, real movement, real mechanics. But we can also think of all kinds of other forms of resistance, and this is actually where these intuitions we have about reality and thought and reflection and contemplation, and this idea that we tend to shield ourselves from reality in everyday life in order to be able to be operational and for survival's sake. This notion that there is a kind of shared collective illusion that is habitual, that is encoded in norms and institutions and ways of life, and that there is a certain kind of difficulty, let's say, in getting a better grasp, a more maybe direct or a more, yeah, maybe say like a more direct grasp of what's real. This struggle is because of resistance, and resistance applied then to psychologically, cognitively, emotionally. So when thinking of reality and resistance as being highly connected, then this also connects this kind of intuitions that we have about the relationship to uh, the world, contemplation, and difficulty that is part of that. So the it the I think it is always the case, even when we speak of these kinds of resistances that exist, um, let's say psychologically, defenses, for example, or justifications, various kinds of psychological phenomena of deflection, when or failures of self-reflection, or the shielding from accountability and responsibility for one's actions, or from work, or from having to do work. This kinds of um, we can think of these are forms of resistances, and if we make the connection to reality, then we can say that what is happening is that there is a reality which is ignored or neglected, and it shows up and manifests as a form of psychological resistance, and in all these various forms and flavors. So there is also that notion, that intuition that relates to resistance. So we can think of reality prescriptively, and this is what constructivism as a whole philosophical mode is about. It is about the realization that actually, it is not just like a simple relationship, that there's the subject and the world and there's a gap, and there's just like there has to be a correlation between this, and the subject has to understand and describe the world as it is without the subject, without me perceiving the world, without me being conscious. And it is quite clear that mental constructs and ways and regular ways of habits, regular ways of being in the world do construct the environment that is around you, and in large scales can construct the whole social environment. And there's this idea of reality itself potentially being constructed, projected, which can go in this more new age ideas about manifestation. I mean, everybody's talking about manifestation. Manifestation is basically this kind of constructivist, postmodern acknowledgement of the world, of this kind of relationship between subject and world, that is not just passive, that the subject can always alter, it has agency, activity in the world, from the earthworm that changes the chemical constitution of the soil around it in order to construct a niche in which it can survive better, to the beaver, to human civilization and our reliance on creating artifacts, to creating artificial environments. Guess what cities are, what urban environments are, in order to more readily and more fittingly survive better and thrive. So construction is a big part of that. But what many of these ideas that relate to construction, relate to the understanding, which is an actual understanding that is a real improvement in thought from the modernist myth of the world outside and the world inside, and this Cartesian separation that is always there, and that of just representing, just describing, pure description. That pure description is kind of like an ideal, and as an ideal, as an aspiration, is good. Is good for science, is good for argumentation, is good for being in a civil society and being able to argue with others, which have different standpoints, but then there's the realization that there are aspects of the world that are under construction, literally, and that as a subject you have an active part in it. But then that's not the end, because you cannot really get out of description completely, and there can be this delusion sometimes that I think it's quite widespread now, very widespread, that you can just go by pure make-believe, and now you have even the tools, and now you have the you have AI, and you have means of financial speculation, you have memes, and you have like global broadcasting of information on the internet that is extremely fast and getting faster and faster. So you can have this mimetic spread that makes you think that something like an idea or whatever can materialize all of a sudden. That there is this kind of flexibility and fluidity to reality to be whatever. And this is behind various philosophical, technological, political movements. This idea that you can actually make the world be whatever. Transhumanism is that for the body. Various kinds of anarchist and progressive politics are that for politics and political economy, and there are other flavors of that, let's say. This idea that you can bypass limitations, whatever is a necessity, whatever is a source of resistance, basically. Which, guess what? Guess what happens when you neglect the source of resistance? You become a little bit detached from reality. The wall is being put on top or in front that provides its own resistance, a resistance from both sides. So I think it is important in this regime of thinking about construction, agency, prescription, basically, of being interested in what to do in the world, not just how it is, or even how it should be. It is important to also have the descriptive part well, like to really have a sense of reality, to keep it. It will, I'm just saying it out, it will become more important as we go, especially given AI psychosis, which is the best example of the lack of resistance, effortless generation of your own worldview being reflected back on you without any effort, without any frictionlessness, frictionless transactions, frictionless information, frictionless tasks done for you by a machine intelligence that you rely on more and more, and that not only you are relying on, but potentially everybody will be relying on more and more, as this thing seems to become almost like electricity, an infrastructure, not just an app. So in this degree of efficiency, ephemeralization, and even fictionalization of things, and it is not that weird that there's so many who are now interested in fiction, in the prefigurative aspects of fiction, in the ability of fiction to become real, however you may call it. Many names exist about it. Some begin with hyper. You can, for those of you who know, will continue the rest. And there is this broader realization that fiction is not just what happens in a novel, in a book, it actually affects reality. There's the Ian Hacking's notion of looping effects, that having this identity of a kind of pathology of sorts can like actually even recreate it in a way. So we're in this weird regime of kind of this fluidity, which is a good thing. It means things are changing. It means that history is moving. It means that things are happening and novelty is being brought in the world and diversity can thrive. But at the same time, it means that we might be losing a grip with reality and with sources of resistance that are so strong that the only thing to do is either acknowledge them or get squashed by them. So the thing is, what are these sources of resistance? What provides the most resistance? And this is the question about reality. And this is the question of whatever kind of idea you have in the world, whatever kind of fictional, ideal, utopian, protopian, or even dystopian scenarios, most of the times, that's what people have on their minds still. Whatever it is, whatever ideal that you want to materialize, you have to ask, what is the source of resistance? Because yes, fictions can become real, but not all of them. And in fact, most of them don't. So the question is, why do some do? And why do they do so regularly? So maybe we should start just pushing things a little bit to see what can't be moved. Yeah. I hope this was of any value whatsoever. And I hope you might have found a little bit of resistance in what I said. Bye bye.